Welcome back, powerful soul, to this version 2 of Collapse Time around your emotional triggers in love and leadership. I spoke for about 7 to 10 minutes on version 1, and a beautiful soul came on and shared she couldn't hear me and realized that my microphone was not turned on. It's on now, hence the green flashing light. So if you're tuning in and you are here live, if you will let me know that you can hear me so that I can proceed and continue this beautiful conversation. Thank you so much, Maria. I appreciate you. Oh my gosh. Okay. This conversation around collapsing time with your emotional triggers has been a conversation that has been brewing for a while. And I have heard phrases such as people having, I love you too, thank you for being here. I have heard phrases such as emotional hangovers. Let me know if you've ever heard of that before. Emotional hangovers, where people will share that they have been an emotional hangover for days. And the symptoms of an emotional hangover can feel exhausting, irritating, feels as if you're zapped out of your true essence, your radiance, your magnetism, your light, your sovereignty, your power is just a little depleted. You're not feeling fully like vavoom. And it doesn't feel empowering. It feels as if somebody slowly siphoned some of your energy through a straw out, and you're not feeling 100% fully yourself. And often this is a symptom after emotional triggers. I used to experience that, and I used to experience the way in which I handled myself during emotional triggers was not the most, how do I want to say this? I wasn't sovereign. It wasn't always mature. It wasn't always empowered. In fact, it was often these unconscious self-sabotaging patterns that were viciously replaying itself as a woman lover and leader. And I wasn't fully aware of it until the consequences were staring me in the face. And the consequences could have been weight gain because I had been emotionally eating and numbing, suppressing, avoiding my emotions because it didn't feel safe to feel. And for me, it didn't feel safe to feel because as a little girl, I had experienced physical, sexual, emotional abuse. And I was programmed through the experiences I had to suppress my experiences, to numb my pain, to not talk about my feelings. And so I found ways to cope with it. And one of the ways I found to cope with it was not just through being a former athlete. If you saw my video I did on redefining success, I shared a story about how I started track and field as a little girl. And that whole story, if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend watching it. But another coping mechanism I had picked up on was food. And for a long time, I didn't know I was turning to food for connection. I didn't know I was turning to food for safety. I didn't know I was turning to food to numb, to suppress, to avoid. And the consequences was weight gain. The consequences was feeling disconnected from God. The consequences was not feeling fully connected to my frequency, to my essence, to my radiance, to my magnetism. The consequences was not feeling good in my body. Let's see here. I used to lash back, try to prove how I was right. And I used to get angry and avoid resolution. Yes, numbing. That's the next point I was about to bring up, was how it showed up in my relationships, because I did something quite similar. I used to show up very reactive. I had a very egoic need to be right. I had this need to prove other people wrong. I had this need to prove myself. I had this need to punish people. And I didn't even know these patterns would show up until there was a consequence. Disconnect in a relationship, not experiencing the closeness, the togetherness that I wanted, not experiencing the intimacy, feeling seen, feeling heard. And oftentimes it created this ripple effect where it was a trigger, and then I dealt with it in a way that wasn't very sovereign and empowering. And then on the back end of that, all of a sudden, there's more consequences. And so it felt that it was turning into this emotional hangover, as people call it. And I'm wondering, how the heck do I get out of this? And for a long time, I had a really difficult relationship with my emotions. Being a highly sensitive, spiritual sensitive woman, deep feeler, able to discern on things that's happening, but also didn't understand that I was programmed to be that way. I was programmed and conditioned to not have an empowering relationship with my emotions. And so, say for instance, come online and I see something on these internet streets, as we often do, and you feel poked, you feel prodded, you feel pushed a little bit. What comes out? Who are you in those moments? And there may have been times where what came out for me was the little girl wanted to hide and didn't want to be seen. And so I wouldn't always show up fully. And then that causes me to suppress my voice. That causes me to dim my light. That causes me to not show up in the fullness of who I am, so that I can magnetize the people who are meant to work with me, so that I can be a magnet for the people who will experience permanent transformation in my world and create even greater impact in my work. Or it would cause me to give them that energy right back. You heard when people talk about I return energy, which isn't sovereign either. It's not empowering either. And so the consequence of those reactive actions is what tends to cause emotional hangovers, because there is the event that creates the trigger. Then there is the experience of yourself within the trigger. And then there is the reaction that you have to the experience of yourself in the trigger. And then there's the consequence of the reaction that you had to the trigger. And you're creating a big mess, disconnecting your relationship with your beloved, not feeling fully inspired and creative and joyful about your work, not feeling radiant and feminine and magnetic in your life as a woman. And so these emotional hangovers, they can start to prolong for days at a time. And before you know it, you feel you've lost time. And it's not necessary. It's not necessary. By being devoted to a practice of presence, what this enables you to do is be so present and attuned with your natural original state, your original essence, your original frequency, that the moment something knocks you off your center, off kilter, you're in tune in the moment. You're aware. And with that awareness, you're able to bring in gentle observation. You're able to bring in self-compassion. You're able to bring in curiosity, and you're able to be inquisitive and be present with the sensations in your body, with the visceral sensations happening in your vessel. Now, this right here is the moment that becomes game changing, because in that moment, if you have not been doing some unconscious paradigm work, meaning you have an association with fear in your body with an unconscious crippling belief. And when that unconscious crippling belief activates the amygdala and your cortisol is flooding up to the prefrontal cortex and you have no frontal awareness of what you're doing right now, you react. It's almost like the Monopoly game where they say, do not collect $200, do not pass go. It's like you got to start all over again. But if you can be present with that sensation and that emotion without judging yourself, without criticizing yourself, without beating yourself up, without attaching meaning to the story that may surface, and be fully present with it, it starts to dissolve. And before you know it, you are able to not only collapse time with the emotional trigger, but you're able to collapse time in your identity. You're able to collapse time in who you're being as a woman, lover, and leader. You're able to collapse time in you and your beloved had a disagreement. Instead of that moment being attached to a memory from the past, you're able to just be present with that moment and deepen connection and intimacy and closeness with your beloved through the conflict rather than creating more discord, more disconnect through the conflict. As a leader, you're able to show up in your God work without feeling that you need to overwork and you need to compete or you need to compare or you need to do more to make more money and be more successful. But it's not coming from an embodied state. It's not coming from you being present in your body. It's not coming from you receiving divine instruction from God. And that's how you burn out. That's how you feel overwhelmed. That's how you feel frustrated. That's how you call in the type of clients you actually don't want to work with. But instead, you're able to show up and be empowered, be sovereign, be led by God. And you say something that impacts someone and that's what they needed to hear. And you're able to create momentum in your work you do because you're flowing. You're being led. You're being guided. You're being supported instead of allowing these triggers to create days and days and days of emotional drunkenness. Now, let me read some of these comments here. I don't want to miss anything. Responding comes with power, self-responsibility, and compassion for yourself and others versus reacting. That's what I am getting from this conversation. So powerful. I needed this in this world. I'm so glad that you feel that way. Thank you for sharing this. Yes, creating love and affinity in all our relationships. Yes, yes, yes. And it's not always easy to do, especially if you're the type of woman who once had a belief that it may have been easier to be like a man. I have worked with women, and I used to feel like that too many moons ago, but I've worked with women who have shared that and expressed that because we're not taught in this modern era how to truly be empowered feminine women. We're not taught how to be the type of women who are driven and ambitious without losing ourselves to it. We're not taught how to show up inside of our relationships with our softer side, with an open heart, and to actually listen and shut the mouth. There's a reason why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We're not always taught these things. And so sometimes we learn through the school of hard knocks. We learn through what we do not want. We learn through the consequences of our experiences and discover that that's actually not who we prefer to be. And in those realizations, we then have a choice. We have a choice. Now, if you're listening to this and you're just taking a moment to reflect and noticing, I reacted yesterday, I reacted in my business, or I reacted in my relationship, or I reacted here. This is not a conversation to beat yourself up or to criticize yourself or to judge yourself. This is an opportunity to just take your awareness to another level. Because when we do that, we can actually remain sovereign in our standards. What I find happen a lot is people set these huge goals at the top of the year. And they have these huge desires of how they prefer to be as a woman, lover, and leader, and what they want to experience in life, love, and leadership. And they create these standards, and they don't remain sovereign in those standards because the gap between is conversations like this. Who are you being when you're triggered? Who are you being when you're emotionally activated? Because that determines your level of sovereignty with your standards. Or being hyper independent and defensive, thinking that is part of being an empowered woman. We forget our softness, our feminine energy. Yes. Yes. And so to be sovereign in our standards, it requires the presence, the practice of presence on a day-to-day basis, where you are so devoted to your embodiment that you are aware in real time of what's happening in your vessel. You're aware in real time of the sensations in your body. You're aware in real time of the emotions that are moving through your body, that it doesn't take the consequence of your reaction to mirror to you how you were being in those moments. That is how you collapse time with emotional triggers. If you need the consequence of your reactivity to mirror to you who you're being when you're emotionally triggered, that right there is showing you why it takes you days or weeks or months or whatever the time frame is to recover from an emotional trigger. Because there's a part of you that is still a bit too comfortable with pain. And there's a part of you that has not allowed yourself to be at peace with pleasure. I'm reminded of the concept of the upper limit by Gay Hendricks. I'm sure you've heard of it. I love this concept because he talks about our capacity for holding feeling good. And when you do not feel good, how long do you dwell there? And when you feel good, how long is it before you sabotage? Because feeling good feels a little foreign. And feeling pain feels a little too foreign, or too familiar rather. And the pain looks different for everyone. For some people, pain is burning the candlestick at both ends, working from sun up to sundown, and you're tired. And you're not feeling fully radiant and magnetic and energetic and full of vitality and vigor. For some people, the pain is feeling disconnected from their beloved and letting that go on and on and on for days and days and weeks and having a sexless relationship and having a relationship where there's no conscious, beautiful communication and there's no understanding. And for some of you, the pain could be not feeling good in your body and you're allowing this to go on. I know this can be uncomfortable to hear if I'm saying something and it resonates, but this is where we have to allow the truth serum in. Some of you will hear me say this, the truth serum. It's a concept that I have put out there around being able to listen to the truth, allow the medicine in into our heart, into our soul, so we can be transformed. Because that's the intention of it. So when I say truth serum, it's with the intention of delivering a message to you that transforms you. I am not an advocate for tough love. I don't subscribe to that because tough and love, in my humble opinion, don't go together. I don't know who came up with that phrase. It sounds absolutely ridiculous to me. I'm like, who came up with that? That sounds terrible. Tough love? Like, that doesn't even go together. I digress. And so when I say truth serum, I am saying to drink the medicine for your heart and soul and allow the elixir to transform you so that you're experiencing what you've been desiring in your life and your love and your leadership. This is a powerful question. Who are you being? And our triggers. Yes. Let me see here. Okay, you look stunning and the light coming in from the side looks like rays of light from heaven. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Let me tune in and make sure that there was nothing else that wanted to come through because I got sidetracked with truth serum and tough love. So the point of this is that you can experience a trigger and be with that trigger and gain an insight from that trigger in a matter of moments if you allow yourself to. If you allow yourself to. And rather than going down rabbit holes of needing to vent, needing to complain, needing to be right, needing to avoid, suppress, numb, whatever experience you're having, if you can just be with it, whatever it is, without judging it, without beating yourself up, without criticizing yourself or others, just be with it. And listen to the message that the trigger wants to say to you. Because often the trigger is coming from a part of ourselves that didn't feel seen, that didn't feel heard, that didn't feel validated, that didn't feel acknowledged, that didn't feel loved. And when you can be with that trigger in real time, that message will come through. And that in that moment is your opportunity to give that part of yourself what she needs. without going and expecting your beloved to, or without going and overworking in your business because you think making more money is going to patch that wound in your soul. But actually being in the moment with it and asking, what are you here to tell me? What are you here to tell me? This was not always as simple as it sounds for me. As I shared before, I had an experience in my childhood full of all sorts of traumas. And I spent decades in self-sabotaging patterns that felt very gratifying in the moment, felt like a form of relief in the moment, especially the food. I used to overeat. I used to binge. I used to numb my pain with food because that was what was modeled in front of me. And so I picked it up as a habit. I picked it up as a pattern. I picked it up as a coping mechanism. I picked up other coping mechanisms. Isolation. I used to isolate like a mofo. I didn't feel safe in relationships. I didn't feel safe in community. I didn't feel safe to be in intimate, close connections with others. And so I had to work through all of those coping mechanisms that I had developed that, though felt like they were keeping me safe, they were actually keeping me away from what I really wanted. And that is the beautiful and interesting part of this, that the very thing that you think is keeping you safe is helping you to not feel the pain, is helping you to avoid that trigger, is helping you to not feel whatever sensations are in your body, is actually pushing you away from what it is you actually want. And that is why it is imperative that you have a practice of presence in your life, that you're able to be with these triggers in a way that doesn't disempower you, that you can rewire the internal responses within, that next time you feel triggered, you are already in tune with what to do. Nothing. There's nothing to do. Just to be with it and allow it to be there. Listen to the message that the trigger has for you, wisdom. Yes. I have a concept that I've never shared publicly before that I'm going to be bringing forward here soon. And it's the SAFE method. And SAFE is an acronym, SAFE. I'm not going to share it here because I'm going to be sharing it later. But this acronym, when you embody it, you literally collapse time with emotional triggers in such a supernatural way where you are one person before you are triggered, and after the trigger is complete, you are a totally other person. And people talk about quantum leaps and identity shifting. This right here is gold. And I haven't shared it publicly because I was behind the scenes going deeper in my embodiment. And one of my values as a feminine leader is to not just talk a good game, not to just show up one way online, but behind the scenes be hot mess express. But I truly believe to walk my talk. I take it seriously in a way that some would probably say is over the top. But that's just my value, and those are my beliefs, that I will not show up on these internet streets and say something if I'm not behind the scenes embodying it myself. And so it took me time before I felt like I was ready to share it openly and publicly. And so something will be coming soon where I will be talking more about this concept of how you can embody this framework as a woman, lover, and leader so that you are showing up in this sovereign, empowered way in your life, in your relationship, in your leadership that will blow your socks off and have you wondering, okay, I'm a badass because what the heck was that just happened? She says, thank you for all of these reminders. Grateful for women like you in the world. So many blessings to you and your family. Thank you. Same to you. Yes. Walk my talk. The only way to live. I wholeheartedly agree. Yes. Embodiment is important. And so if that's something you're interested in, if you want to put in the comments the acronym SAFE, S period, A period, F period, E period, that way I know who's interested. And if you felt resonance with this conversation and you are ready to invest in spiritual mentorship, I am currently opening 3 private exclusive mentorship spots this quarter. And I begin that process through a feminine up-level consultation call. The feminine up-level consultation call is a way for you and I to connect one-on-one privately. It is a paid call. That way, no one's wasting their time, myself and you included, and you're actually invested in, even if that's the only time we talk, you will experience a shift because that's just who I be. But it's a great time to connect and for me to get to know you better, but also for you to share what is your vision? What are your desires? We can look at the gaps that are standing in the way between you and where you're desiring to go in your life, in your love, in your leadership. And I always make a professional recommendation on the next best steps you can take, even if it's not working with me. I am not one of those mentors or coaches that will just take anybody on because they have the money to pay. And so I do let that be clear. It has to feel like a mutual resonance. And so if it does feel like a mutual resonance, then I will proceed to share how we can continue to work together. The time frames that I am opening mentorship up for is a 4-month capacity and a 1-year capacity. And so if either of those sound of interest to you, then you can reach out so that you can book your feminine up-level consultation call this week. And if you're interested in the information about the SAFE method and what's up with that and what's coming forward about that, then you want to let me know in the comments. That would be amazing. And one final ask of you, if you know someone who would find value in what I shared and you found resonance with what I shared, then if you want to share this, I would appreciate it. Thank you so much for spending time with me on this beautiful sunny Sunday, and I shall connect with you very soon. Take care now.